like a lot of this in the beginning was annoying because it was so much thinking. Oh, I need to think about this. Oh, I need to know this about this account. Oh, I need to know this about this budget. It's a lot of shit to know, but once you get a system around it, it's very easy. You can almost automate it once you... Hey everyone, welcome back to the Melanated Scenes page. I am Tiara and we are going to continue along this road of the debt-free series. So this time around, we will be talking about understanding your credit cards, loans, and the interest rates attached to them. I will not say that I'm very good in the interest area because, as we said on the first video, we did not really account for interest. We just looked at the numbers that were there, but we definitely probably paid a little bit more than $150,000 off, but we did not account for interest. So in this section, we will talk about interest a little bit, how we looked at it, but of course, I'm not saying that we're the gurus or perfect example. This is just our example. So yeah, if you are enjoying this information that you've gotten so far with the first 3 videos, then make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and forward this information on to anyone that you think will find this of value. So, all right, let's jump into this mess again. It's necessary. Okay, so what you guys see here is a breakdown of all of my cards as well as my student loans by the date that it was opened. So when the account was opened, the account type, the limit on that card, the balance that's owed, the minimum payment, the APR associated with that card, my utilization percentage, and then what my utilization should be. I created a line here down this area here to show like the split between my credit cards and my student loans down here at the bottom because certain areas do not apply. So as you guys see here, for my Discover card, my American Express, this is an Angel credit card, and then a USAA card. And this was pulled from an excerpt in July of 2017. So some of these things might look a little different. I think on the previous video, I didn't have the Angel card, but the Discover, American Express, and USAA card were there. But as you guys see, my oldest account was my Discover account, which was opened in August of 2011. That is while I was in college. And you see that the account type is revolving. So credit cards are revolving credit, whereas my student loans, of course, they're student loans. So when you're looking at your credit history, they like to see diversification within your credit report, or diversification makes up a portion of what provides your credit score, whether it's, you know, high or low. The more diversified, so if you had credit cards, a student loan, a car loan, or a mortgage, all of these things show differently in your credit report and make up for a more healthy score. So the limit for my Discover card at that time was $500, which is funny. The balance on it then was 0. Minimum payment was 0, but you see my APR was 17%, 17.99, so might as well be 18%. Utilization 0, and then what my utilization should be is $150. So what the utilization part is basically based off of the limit that you have on your card, what percentage of that is being used up by the balance. So to calculate your utilization would be to take your balance and divide it by the limit, and it'll give you a certain percentage. In this case with the Discover card, there is no utilization percentage, it's 0. But if we move down to the second card, you see the American Express shows that it has a limit of $8,000. But at that time in July in 2017, I had $5,296 as a balance with the APR 15.99% and a utilization percentage of 66%. So if you see the very last column here, it says that my utilization should be $2,400, which means I shouldn't be charging more than $2,400 on this card in order to stay within the 33% or 30% utilization that is deemed okay or good when taking your credit report into account. If you are maxing out cards or using more than 33% of the limit that is allowed, you are seen as a risky borrower, I guess is the word that we'll use. And so if you want to be seen as someone who's not presenting a lot of risk to the credit card companies or loan companies that are fronting you money, then you should not be spending over 30% of the limit that is on your card. So as you can see with my American Express card and the USAA card, they're both in the 60% utilization bracket, and here I've spent $3,578 when I shouldn't have even spent over $1,600 on my USAA card. So in July of 2017, it's very clear that I'm using my credit card maybe to supplement income in some kind of way, because I'm clearly using my card more than it needs to be used. If you have to swipe over 30% of whatever limit you're granted by your credit card holder, then that might be an area to also look into. Where's your money going? Why is it going there? Why are you swiping so much? This is just a snapshot of all of my cards at the time in July of 2017, and then also my student loans, their balances, minimum payments. And then you see here for APR for my Great Lakes loan, it says varies. This is because I had multiple small student loans that amounted up to this $45,735 because I had unsubsidized and subsidized loans that were granted each year. And so when you go into my portal, you would see that there's like, I don't know, maybe 20 different loans in one place that add up to this amount, and they all range somewhere between 3 and 6% for the APR. So that's why this says varies here. Another thing that could be added to this table are the due dates. So something that I did after Marcos and I got our budgets and stuff in line was I changed the due dates for all of my credit cards and some of my other bills to the first week of every month, since we get paid once a month. And so it just made more sense for me to move my due dates to someday within the first week of each month, because there were a couple instances where I had gotten paid, we started our budget, I made all the payments that we had allotted to each item, and then 2 weeks later I get an email stating that, oh, well, you know, your payment is due. And it's like, how's a payment due when I've already paid? And this is because I was not aware of the billing cycle. So on those instances, I actually had to pay twice, which also, when you're dealing with a budget, it was messing with the numbers that we had in the budget. So the budget was always off in the beginning, and it was because of due dates. So when you put your table together like this to get a look at all your credit cards, also create a column for your due dates, because if your due dates are all over the place for the month, it make more sense to put it the very first week of each month or the very last week of each month. Or if you get paid bi-weekly, then you can stagger it, whatever works best for you. But that is something to also consider when getting your finances in order and understanding what needs to be paid, when it needs to be paid, and how much you're paying on each thing, so you don't have an instance like mine where you're getting an email saying you owe some money somewhere when you already freaking paid the bill. Okay, so we just went over the snapshot of the breakdown of all your credit cards, student loans. We looked at when the account was open, and I wanted to touch on why when the account was open is important. I put mine in order from oldest to most recent. And the reason for that is so I can understand how long my credit history is. And so my Discover card, I mentioned this very lightly on one of the previous videos, but Dave Ramsey says to not use credit cards at all, cut them up, get rid of them, never use them again. And I said that I did not do that. I stopped using them, but I didn't cut them up, and I did not close any accounts, because your credit score is also tied to your credit history. And the longer your credit history, the better your score can be based off of how well you've been maintaining that account. And so for me, I don't ever want to close this Discover account because all of my credit history is aligned or connected to this card. So my Discover card allows for me to have 10 years of credit history. So if I were to close that account out, that entire credit history is gone. So just imagine if I got a new credit card, have only had it for 5 years, and I have my Discover card and say, oh, well, I'm done paying this one off. I'm gonna just get rid of it and close it out. I just now got rid of the 10-year credit history attached to that card. So now I only have the 5 years that is attached to the new card, but it looks better if you have a longer credit history. So you never, in my opinion, want to close out your accounts, especially if they are accounts that have a lot of history connected to them. The longer you've had them, the more history they have. So for me, I still keep that Discover card alive. I do the bare minimum to keep it on. You sometimes will get notifications from your card company saying basically if you don't use this card within so and so days, then we're going to close out the account due to inactivity. Other card companies will not give you a heads up because it's in your terms and conditions, and they will just turn the card off, which has also happened to me, but it was with a card that I had had only for like a year, so it really didn't matter to me. But yeah, I'm keeping my Discover card. My Discover and my USAA cards are the two cards that I will make sure I don't know, go get gas and then pay it off immediately, just to show activity on the card so you can keep the credit history and so you can keep your good credit score. I guarantee if I were to close out this Discover account, my credit score would drop probably significantly because of the credit history attached to this card. I've had that card literally since I was in my sophomore year of college, and now I'm 29 years old. Like, that would be ridiculous to get rid of the credit history associated with that card. And I've also had no missed payments, which is also something that contributes to your credit score. So why would I want to get rid of something like that that shows that I am a good borrower if I needed to borrow? Yes, keep your cards, especially your cards that you've had for a very long time. Do not go out and start shopping again. That's not at all what I'm saying, but just be aware that your credit history is attached to your cards. And if you've had a card for a long time, you want to keep that credit history. Therefore, put the card somewhere, hide it. If you need to, you can cut it up, but do not close out your account so you can keep the credit history. Another thing I want to clear up, if I wasn't clear when I was showing you the table, is the what your utilization should be section. If I wasn't clear, basically I'm just saying if you have a certain limit on your card, you should try not to use more than a third of the limit when you're using the card. I was saying previously that I should not have been spending X amount of money on this card, which is not true, but at the same time, it is true if I was not going to be able to pay it off to zero at the end of the month. And during those times, I would not have been able to pay $5,296 to zero at the end of the month, which means I would revolve it or it would carry over into the next month. You don't want that. You want to be able to pay your credit cards down to zero at the end of each month if you're going to be using them. And so when you're revolving credit or carry credit over, you don't want to carry balances over to the next month that are in excess of 30% of the limit. That's what I was trying to explain when I was showing the walkthrough of the table. So yeah, remember a third. Try not to go over that if you're going to be carrying it over to the next month or you can't pay it to zero. But if you can, you know, whatever, make sure you just pay it down to zero every single month. And by the way, this is once you are out of debt. I say that because now that we are out of debt, we have a designated card that we use. Marcos has his, I have mine, and it's literally only to build points with Delta in Alaska. And this is another thing that Dave Ramsey advises against. He says he's never heard of anybody who's rich who's talking about they got rich through their Alaska miles or whatever. We're not trying to get rich, but if we're going to spend the money anyways on our groceries or whatever else through our debit account, we figured, well, we just get the points for it and pay the card to zero at the end of each month. So that's what we're choosing to do. And so if we need to take a trip or something and it costs us $2,000, I'm going to charge the card and get 2,000 miles because I know for a fact I have enough money and we'll be paying this down to zero at the end of the month. But while you're doing your budgeting and paying off all your stuff, this does not apply. pay your stuff down, pay it to zero, put your cards aside. And the table that I have here today is not all encompassing of all of the credit card debt that I had, because I accrued more over the first year, maybe the first year before we actually started paying off our stuff. I accrued a lot more in credit card debt, and so did Marcos, before we actually start paying things off. So the list I have here looks very like simple and straightforward, but let's add like another maybe close to $30,000 more in credit card debt before we actually started paying off stuff. The last thing to note from this sheet would be the APR. I have this here because some people like to attack their debt by the avalanche style, which is going by highest percentage rate to lowest, which makes sense mathematically, but like we were explaining before in the announcement of our debt-freeness, we decided not to go the avalanche route because it takes a lot longer to pay off a huge amount. Like if we had one of our credit cards that had like $10,000 on it from our wedding at 17%, it's going to take a long time to pay off that $10,000 versus my Discover card that maybe had $400 on it. And so we decided to do ours from smallest to largest because we wanted to see wins very early on so we could keep our momentum and keep wanting to pay off our debt. So that was a choice that we made, but it's always good to still understand your percentage rates that are attached to these credit cards, especially if you have a large amount of money on these credit cards. If you owe somebody $10,000 and then you have an APR of like the $17.99 that I have here, just calculate that, how much you're actually paying them in interest. Another way to also see how much you would be paying the cardholder over time would be to look at your statement that they send you in the mail, and it will show you, it has a section, and I wish I still had one, but if you look, there's a section that shows you your minimum payment is this, and if you were to only pay your minimum payment to pay off the balance that you have on your card, this is when you would be able to pay it off by, and it's something ridiculous. It's like 10 years out, and you're usually paying almost like double, if not more, of what you actually owe them currently if you only want to pay the minimum payment. So I would recommend not doing that, but that's why I had the APR here, so you could understand, like, damn, I'm paying this person 16% in interest on a balance of $5,296. It's a lot of fucking money when you think about it over time. Or the same thing with the USAA card. I'm paying them 18% on $3,578. It's a lot of money over time, especially if I decided that I'm only going to pay the minimum payment until this thing is finally paid off. Like, it's good to understand how much interest you're paying someone and convert it over to dollars so you can have that dollar amount burned into your brain, because once you understand how much money is actually going out by you paying this interest, instead of thinking of it as, oh, well, I can afford the minimum payment so I'm fine. No, you're literally fucking paying these people double because you want to shop. Like, if you wanted to go shop and buy some shoes, is it really worth paying that 2-3 times over just because you wanted a pair of shoes at that time? Probably not. So yeah, get an idea of how much you're actually paying out when it comes to interest. For us, interest was like something where I'm like, that's too much to think about, so we don't care. We're just gonna do it this way. And I think either way, even if we would have looked at it earlier on, we still would have done it the way that we did do it. And I'm actually happy that we did do it the way we did do it, because once we started paying off our credit cards, we started receiving mail from the credit cards that had been paid off for a few months saying, hey, we offer you 0% APR for 12 months or for 15 months if you do a balance transfer. And so we did that for a while. Marcos was able to buy my debt twice. And then after that, when COVID hit and they were doing all these relief programs, especially for student loans, our last year of paying off debt, everything was a 0%. We weren't paying interest on anything because we had balance transferred the items that did have interest attached to them over to an account that was now offering us a 0% APR because they wanted us to use the card, because they were banking on us not being able to pay the balance off by the time the 0% is expired. But we didn't do that. We paid it off before the time was up. We didn't use that time to stretch out how long we could pay off something and not have to pay interest against it. Yeah, and we won. The last year of us paying down our debt, we paid no interest attached to anything. So I would say that was about $70,000, maybe $80,000 the last year. Paid no interest on it because we did the snowball method, paid down all of our small cards super quick, and then once we didn't use them for like 6 months, then the credit card companies were thinking, well, how can we get this person to use our cards again? How can we like get this person to put a balance on this card? And they're most likely, because most people do not end up paying off the amount that is charged to their card. They revolve it, they carry it over to the next month and the next month and the next month, and like out of nowhere you're already done with your 12-month or your 15-month 0% APR stint is now done, and now you're like, oh shit, well I still have, I don't know, $5,000 left to pay on this card, and now I'm gonna have to pay interest, which is now back to the 17 or the 15% interest that you're paying prior. So yes, that is a way to finesse the system. Pay these cards off as quick as possible, leave them sitting there, and lo and behold, they will start emailing. They will start sending these things in the mail saying, hey, want to do a balance transfer? And the balance transfer, of course, comes with like terms and conditions, and it's usually like you have to pay a 3% fee on whatever the amount is that you're transferring over, which who cares? It's like a couple $100 versus you paying thousands of dollars over time if you keep paying the interest that you're paying on your other card. And then you have that 12 months. Yeah, and if I can just kill that shit as quick as you can, and you'll come out like me, not having to pay interest on $70,000, $80,000 an entire year. And that's a way where we found a silver lining in the whole pandemic and staying home, is we weren't spending as much money, and then the 0% APR on all the student loans or them being deferred completely. We could have said, oh, well, COVID's happening, so we'll hoard money. We decided not to. We put a little bit aside in the beginning because we didn't know what was going to happen. And then after a couple months, we were just like, okay, we should be good. We were blessed to keep our jobs, and so we just killed it. We said 0%. I told you guys before, my Great Lakes student loans were accruing $6 and some change every day. And so once I got the opportunity to have 0% interest on my student loans, we were able to pay off my student loans within a matter of 6 months. We wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't a 0% APR situation. So yeah, get up close and personal with your interest rates so you know what you're paying out of pocket. But I wouldn't keep my focus there. It's just something to know so you know how much money is going out also in interest, when you're just thinking like, oh, well, minimum payment. Oh, well, no. Minimum payments are sucking up your money. It makes it seem like it's nice and convenient, but it's actually fucking killing your pockets. So yes, after you have all of this broken down, you understand your loans, you understand your credit cards, you understand how old your credit history is, and what cards you need to maintain or keep around or keep the accounts live so you can keep that credit history, then you are good to start looking into your budgeting. Actually, before budgeting, we will look into, on the next video, how to set up your accounts. If you need to make some changes, I'm gonna walk you guys through what I end up needing to do to get these accounts in order. We created a system around our accounts so we knew what was going in, what was going out, what was going to be used for savings, and we had specific accounts for each one of these things. So the next video will be around that, understanding and setting up your accounts where they make sense. You don't have to copy what I did. I'm just giving you guys an overview of what I did to make it a seamless process so you don't have to think. Because I feel like a lot of this in the beginning was annoying because there was so much thinking. Oh, I need to think about this. Oh, I need to know this about this account. Oh, I need to know this about my money. I need to know this about this budget. It's a lot of shit to know. But once you get a system around it, it's very easy. You can almost automate it once you have everything set up. So it seems like there's been a lot of just talk of, oh, do this, do that, pay attention to this, understand this, dissect this. But if you don't understand, you can't do. If you don't know the why, it's very difficult to understand how to do something. So we're almost past the why part, asking questions, and we're going to get into the how starting on the next video. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. Let me know in the comments if any of this information was helpful, or if I missed something, or you had a question around something that I did not answer. Let me know in the comments. I will get back to you. And if this was helpful, please put a thumbs up, and yeah, subscribe to the page. And if you know anybody out there who needs to get their money situation pulled together, send them these fucking videos.